This is basically a challenge to see how many times I can say Leviathan in one video. So all of the Arrowverse shows ended on pretty big cliffhangers. Most of them are pretty self-explanatory or just direct setups for Crisis on Infinite Earths. One such that may not fall into either category is that of Supergirl's Season 4 final, which had a bunch of stuff set up for next season. Some of these involve Lena knowing Kara is Supergirl, the Monitor showing up with a Martian, who I might go over in another video, and the Monitor also seemingly resurrecting Lex Luthor. The Martian bit and Lex Luthor bit could very well be Crisis on Infinite Earths setups. But one thing that was there seems to be some organization that is interested in Cat Grant and may possibly be next season's big bad. This organization has been named Leviathan. Now, as always, when making a video like this, I want to stress the point that the Leviathan and Supergirl may not be related to anything from the comics at all. It could be a completely new thing made just for the show, or it could take bits and pieces from random comic book elements and call it Leviathan. The Arrowverse shows have a habit of doing this, taking things from the comics and changing them so much that they're almost unidentifiable. I love the shows, but I really wish once in a while that they'd do something a little bit more in line with the comics. Anyway, one version of Leviathan comes from the Legion of Superhero comics in the 90s. This is a relatively small and obscure reference and is kind of just used as an alias of some characters. There was a version of the Legion from an alternate timeline and they were referred to as the Batch SW6 Legion, or the Legionnaires. There is a version of Colossal Boy in the Batch SW6 and he went by the alias Leviathan. Much later on, a character called Gim Allen showed up. He's kind of like Ant-Man from Marvel in that he can increase and decrease his size. He gained his powers on Mars after a meteor crashed beside him. The radiation from that meteor gave him his powers, and that's how he became Leviathan. Well, he took on the name Leviathan, and eventually became leader of the new version of the Legion. During a battle with Dr. Regulus, Leviathan blasted Regulus with radiation from a nearby gas main, but unfortunately this radiation was fatal and ended up killing Gim. Another Legion member called Salu Digby was a close friend of Gim's. She went by the name Shrinking Violet, but after Gim's death, she took on the name of Leviathan to honor Gim. Supergirl's show has tangled with the Legion of Superheroes quite a bit, first in Season 3 with Mon-El returning as a member of the Legion and her introduction to Saturn Girl and Brainiac 5. We've learned a lot about this version of the Legion over the years due to these characters. We know that Wynn is currently with them in the 31st century, and that Neonel's descendant is Dreamgirl, a member of the Legion. So it's definitely possible that Leviathan could be in some way connected to the Legion, but I don't think so. For one of the Leviathan seems to be an organization and kind of villains, and that doesn't really fit anywhere with the Legion's version of this character. So if we cross out the Legion, then who does that leave us with? Well, it leaves us with the only other thing in DC called Leviathan, and that is an organization that has really only been a big thing in recent comics. Which isn't unusual. Both Arrow and the Flash's recent seasons brought in very recent DC characters, such as Godspeed and the Ninth Circle, which have both only been around for about 3 years. The thing about Leviathan is that they are mainly Batman villains, and they're hugely connected to Talia al Ghul and by extension, the League of Assassins. If this was Arrow alluding to Leviathan, then I would be 100% saying that this is the characters that that the show is taking inspiration from. But because it's Supergirl, it makes me a little hesitant. Except that last month Leviathan graduated from small Batman-related villains to DC villains, as the current DC comic event is called Leviathan Rising and is based on Superman. So going deeper than their Talia and Batman connections, who is Leviathan? Well, it actually started out as somewhat of an entity or a hive mind-like creature in Seven Soldiers Clarion issue 2 from 2005. The character is kind of like Hive from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. season 3, I guess. Except Leviathan was a little more creepy in that it was basically using a load of mindless children to attack and do its bidding. This was later retconned or at least changed so that it wasn't actually an entity and instead an organization controlling the children. There was a huge gap in this because after Leviathan's appearance as the entity in Seven Soldiers, the characters stayed away until 2011 when the organization showed up in Batman The Return. The organization came about as Talia al Ghul left the League of Assassins, and their purpose was to destroy society and rule what was left. After Bruce had his first run-in with them, he assembled the group named Batman Incorporated, which is essentially a worldwide Batman-related police squad, to fight Leviathan. And Leviathan was using mind-controlled children and was creating their own metahumans too. Things became more personal when Bruce and the rest of Batman Incorporated discovered that Talia was leading Leviathan, which led to her stating that besides destroying society, she was also going to kill everyone who follows Batman. Soon after this, Talia then began concentrating her sight on Gotham itself, placing mind-controlled chemicals in Gotham's food supply and through the local fast food chains. Leviathan was attempting to control all the children in Gotham. And then Talia made her first fatal mistake as leader of Leviathan when she attempted to kill one of the underbosses in the organization. This led the group to splinter into factions, and a civil war basically erupted between the entire organization. After the Civil War ended, the group started to reform and this time restructure their sight on the Man of Steel himself, Superman. We don't really know exactly what is happening with this, as this is pretty much where the comics currently are. Leviathan Rising is all about how Leviathan is targeting Metropolis and something to do with Superman. So yeah, it's entirely possible that Supergirl Season 5 could be heavily based on Leviathan Rising and just replace the Superman elements with Kara. But I'm unsure, it's a little too recent in my opinion. I think it's more likely that we'll see the Batman-like scenario with Leviathan targeting National City and Supergirl's followers, because in Supergirl's Earth, she's already kind of a world hero. She comes from National City, but she's more kind of... It's like with Batman Incorporated, where it's basically Batman and his followers protecting the entire world. In Supergirl, Supergirl is basically protecting the entire world, unlike where in Arrow, Oliver is very much Star City, and in Flash, Barry is very much Central City. Supergirl's more world-based. And they could do something like that, with Leviathan kind of concentrating their attack on Natural City, and the version of Supergirl Incorporated with, like, J'onn J'onzz and all that. I highly doubt that the show will go as dark as the mind-controlling children aspect, but it's possible. It seems like something even Arrow would try and avoid, so I think Supergirl wouldn't dare to do that, because Supergirl is one of the lighter shows. But that's pretty much all I have. I hope some of what I said turns out to be true, but we'll probably find out a decent bit when we get our first info and trailer at San Diego Comic-Con at the end of next month. What do you think? Do you agree with me or do you not? And if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing. And I hope you have an awesome day.